Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're re-diving into one of the most dramatic and turbulent periods in English history, the Wars of the Roses. This wasn't a war fought over flowers, but a brutal, 30-year civil war for the ultimate prize, the crown of England. So, grab a cup of tea, get comfortable, and let's journey back to the 15th century. Our story begins with two rival branches of the royal house of Plantagenet, the House of Lancaster, represented by a red rose, and the House of York, symbolized by a white rose. For decades, England had been ruled by Lancastrian kings, but their grip on power was becoming increasingly fragile. King Henry VI, a pious but mentally unstable ruler, was prone to bouts of catatonia, leaving a power vacuum at the heart of the kingdom. His wife, the formidable and ambitious Margaret of Anjou, effectively ruled in his stead, but her French origins made her unpopular with the English nobility. Enter Richard, Duke of York. He was a powerful nobleman with a strong claim to the throne himself, arguably even stronger than Henry's. He was also a capable military leader and a popular figure. As Henry VI's mental health declined, Richard was appointed protector of the realm, essentially ruling the country. This did not sit well with Queen Margaret and the Lancastrian faction, who saw him as a direct threat to their power and the inheritance of their young son, Prince Edward. The stage was set for a monumental clash. The first shots were fired in 1455 at the First Battle of St. Albans. Yorkist forces, led by Richard and his powerful ally, Richard Neville, the Earl of Warwick, later known as the Kingmaker, clashed with the Yorkists won a decisive victory, capturing King Henry VI and killing several key Lancastrian nobles. Richard of York once again became protector, but this was only the beginning. The battle lines were drawn, and England was plunged into a bloody conflict that would pit families against each other and tear the realm apart. Over the next few years, the fortunes of war swung back and forth like a pendulum. The Lancastrians, under the fierce leadership of Queen Margaret, would regroup and win a battle, only for the Yorkists to strike back. A key turning point came in 1460 at the Battle of Wakefield. In a disastrous defeat for the Yorkists, Richard, Duke of York, was killed. His head, along with those of his son Edmund and the Earl of Salisbury, was impaled on a spike and displayed over the gates of the city of York, mockingly adorned with a paper crown. It was a brutal act, meant to crush the Yorkist cause forever, but it had the opposite effect. The death of his father only fueled the ambition of Richard's eldest son, Edward. He was young, charismatic, and a brilliant military commander. Standing at an imposing 6'4", he was everything the frail Henry VI was not. With the crucial support of the Earl of Warwick, Edward rallied the Yorkist forces. In 1461, he won a crushing victory at the Battle of Tote. It fought in a snowstorm. It was one of the largest and bloodiest battles ever fought on English soil. The Lancastrian army was annihilated, and thousands were killed. Following this triumph, Edward marched to London and was crowned King Edward IV. The first Yorkist king was on the throne. For a time, it seemed the war was over. Edward IV ruled for nearly a decade, bringing a semblance of stability back to England. However, trouble was brewing within his own camp. The Kingmaker, the Earl of Warwick, who had been instrumental in putting Edward on the throne, grew resentful of the king's independence. The final straw came when Edward secretly married a commoner, Elizabeth Woodville, and began promoting her family. The Woodvilles' two positions of power, sidelining Warwick. Feeling betrayed, Warwick did the unthinkable. He switched sides. He fled to France and formed an alliance with his old enemy, Margaret of Anjou. Together, they launched an invasion of England in 1470. Caught by surprise, Edward IV was forced to flee to Burgundy, and Henry VI was briefly restored to the throne. This period is known as the readoption of Henry VI, but Edward was not one to give up. With financial and military backing from his brother-in-law, the Duke of Burgundy, he returned to England in 1471, more determined than ever. What followed was a swift and brutal campaign. At the Battle of Barnet, Edward faced off against his former mentor, Warwick. In the fog of battle, the Kingmaker was slain. Just a few weeks later, at the Battle of Tewkesbury, Edward destroyed the remaining Lancastrian forces. Queen Margaret was captured, and her son, Prince Edward, the Lancastrian heir, was killed either in the battle or executed shortly after. To secure his throne once and for all, Edward had the unfortunate Henry VI quietly murdered in the Tower of London. The main line of the House of Lancaster was extinguished. Edward IV ruled peacefully for another 12 years until his unexpected death in 1483. This single event threw the kingdom back into chaos. Edward's heir was his 12-year-old son, Edward V, but the late king's younger brother, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, saw his chance. Citing a claim that Edward IV's marriage to Elizabeth Woodville was invalid, Richard declared his nephews illegitimate. He locked the young Edward V and his younger brother, also named Richard, in the Tower of London. The two boys, known to history as the Princes in the Tower, were never seen again. Their fate remains one of history's greatest mysteries. With the princes gone, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, had himself crowned King Richard III, but his reign was built on a shaky foundation of suspicion and fear. Many nobles, even former Yorkists, were horrified by his actions. They began to flock to a new challenger, a man with a distant, and frankly, quite weak, claim to the throne through a Lancastrian line, Henry Tudor. Henry had been living in exile in France for years, biding his time. Now, with support from both disgruntled Yorkists and diehard Lancastrians, he landed with an army in Wales in 1485. He marched inland to meet Richard III at Bosworth Field. The battle was a close-run thing, but a crucial betrayal sealed Richard's fate. Some of his key allies switched sides mid-battle, turning the tide in Henry's favor. Richard III, refusing to flee, charged directly at Henry Tudor in a desperate attempt to win the day, but was unhorsed and killed, becoming the last English king to die in battle. Henry Tudor was crowned King Henry VII, founding the famous Tudor dynasty. To finally heal the decades of division, he made a brilliant political move. He married Elizabeth of York, the eldest daughter of the Yorkist king, Edward IV. This marriage symbolically united the White Rose of York and the Red Rose of Lancaster, creating the new Tudor Rose. The Wars of the Roses were finally over. This brutal, 30-year conflict reshaped the English nobility, consolidated power in the hands of the monarch, and paved the way for the powerful Tudor dynasty that would include figures like Henry VIII and Elizabeth I. And that's the whirlwind story of the Wars of the Roses, a complex and fascinating period full of ambition, betrayal, and bloodshed. What do you think is the most dramatic moment in the war? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And do you forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you do miss our next historical deep dive. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.